Lakeland Currents, your public affairs program for North Central Minnesota. Closed captioning is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Lakeland Currents. I'm Ray Gildow with a special guest tonight that you've probably never heard of, but you're going to hear from her, I think, a lot in the future. It's Katie Heppner, who is the Economic Development or Economic Alliance Director,
Correct.
Executive Director of the Economic Alliance. We're here to talk about Wadena County is Calling.
Yes.
Is going to be the title of the program. And let's talk a little bit first, Katie, about what is the Economic Alliance.
So we're the Economic Development Corporation that serves Wadena County. So our mission is to make Wadena County the best place to do business. That's our goal. It's a pretty big one, but we do it through a variety of means. We do mainly advocacy work, education, working with entrepreneurs and business owners and community members and making sure they're connected to resources and information they need to grow. And then networking, trying to connect others so that they can build the community themselves.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about yourself. What is your background before you got into this?
All right.
And I need to say this, over the many years I've worked with economic development people from cities and small communities, that's a tough job. It's a job that sees lots of turnover.
Yes.
Because it's hard to get, companies, there's so much competition out there for them. So what is your background before you got into this?
So I was born and raised on the Iron Range, and that was just a tremendous childhood. And a big part of it was really seeing the boom and bust economy of the mines. And so from a young age, I saw firsthand the impact that the economy and businesses can have on people's everyday lives. And I knew I wanted to somehow be involved in making communities a better place. But I didn't really know how. I didn't really know what economic development was, growing up. So I went on to get my bachelor's in political science from Minnesota State Mankato, and then I pursued a master's in public administration, also from Mankato. And then after graduation, I came up here to the Brainerd Lakes area and really fell in love with central Minnesota and really kind of found it to be my home. And then worked for Crow Wing County for a while. And then when the opening came up at the Economic Alliance, it was kind of like my dream job. Working not only with local government, but also small businesses. Economic development's very unique in that aspect, and that's not just straight, government programs and services, but it has this private industry and community. It's kind of a way to bring all the puzzle pieces together of what a community is. And I've been doing it for about 4.5 years. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love Wadena County.
And what is the Economic Alliance and what is the geographic stretch of that?
Yeah, so we're the Economic Development Corporation that serves just Wadena County. And it was formed in 2011. Back then, there wasn't an organization that was focused on community and economic development in that area. And so they knew other communities had them, think of like Bladek and Brainerd.
Sure.
And they wanted a group that just focused on building up Wadena County. And so really the folks at West Central Telephone Association kind of took up the mantle and started the organization. And then I came on board in 2018.
Can you give us a little idea of the boundaries of Wadena County and maybe the bigger communities that are in the county?
Yeah, so first, probably trying to think of a map here, what would be the best way to do it. So at the far east corner, you have Staples. Staples is half in Wadena and half in Todd County. Then moving further west, you go through Aldrich, a tiny community there, and then into Verndale, and then you have Wadena, which is the biggest city in the county and the county seat.
And what's the population roughly of Wadena?
I think it's just under 5,000 now.
5,000, okay.
Yep. And they have a thriving downtown. If anyone listening hasn't visited downtown Wadena, it has been booming these past few years. It's been so incredible to see the small businesses open and start. There's a brewery there now, a distillery, a lot of local businesses. So now's the time of year when people should be shopping local. So check out downtown Wadena.
You know, my wife and I both live in Staples, and in the early 70s to the late 70s, we did most of our shopping in Wadena because Wadena had a wide variety of different kinds of stores. And then that movement towards the big box stores came in, and as you know, knocked off many of those smaller businesses that were around. So when you think of Wadena as the biggest city in the county, and you got Verndale and Staples, these are not what you would consider booming economic places now, are they?
I mean,
but you're going to change that.
We're hoping to change that. You know, I think there's a really kind of north-south divide in Wadena County. So in the northern half of the county, you have communities like Sabika and Monaga, great small towns, you know, filled with the most wonderful people, you know, but they just don't have the stronger economic base that maybe Wadena does as the county center. And so what we're really trying to do is promote not just Wadena, which is a great place, a thriving place, but the county as a whole. And you know, one of the best things about Wadena County isn't maybe necessarily all these industrious centers, but it's the green space we have, and the room for outdoor recreation, and just the room to grow, and the room to buy 40 acres of land, build a house, and have high-speed internet. Rare for a community to be able to offer that.
It is. I've been following that internet debate, and there's a lot of larger communities that still don't have it. That's just amazing.
Yeah, and we're almost at 100% connection.
Wow.
And we're in the top 5 for counties rated by the Blandon Foundation for broadband connection.
Wow.
So to think of all these other rural and even non-rural communities in Minnesota are saying, how do we get broadband? How do we get access to the internet? Wadena County, of all places, has that.
That is amazing.
You know?
I don't know if you've ever worked with Ben Winchester from the university.
Yes.
You know, one of his themes was there is not a brain drain in rural Minnesota, which is always the assumption that that's what's happening. Everybody's leaving the little communities to go to the bigger one. I think now it's almost the opposite. Don't you think so? With the virus hitting the countries, it seems like more and more people are moving back to working from home, working through the internet. Are you finding that to be the case?
100%. And so it's amazing as we started, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about Wadena County is calling more in depth, but as we started having these conversations about resident recruitment, I was just meeting so many people from around the county who had similar stories. You know, I met a woman just the other day she started a business downtown Wadena, Lake State Play Cafe, little free plug there. And she and her husband moved from the Twin Cities in the middle of the pandemic to Wadena. They had no connection to Wadena. They just researched good communities to move to. They wanted a more rural, small town lifestyle, but with still the amenities that, you know, people expect. And they came across Wadena and started their own business. And that's the stories we'd like to elevate, and that's kind of what we also want to replicate as well.
Now, what is the actual emphasis from Wadena County is calling?
So we're really trying to attract newcomers to the region, and there's kind of 2 main target audience. One are those remote workers that you mentioned, because we have such great internet access. We're really trying to spread the message like you can have a hobby farm, or you can have kind of room to play and grow, and you can keep your job, and you can have high-speed internet and enjoy all the amenities that you expect, you know, and access to telehealth and all of that, but live a slower pace, not have such a rough commute. You know, there's a real joy in that we're trying to spread. And the other target audience is what, you know, might be called rural rebound. So think of folks who graduated, you know, from high school in Wadena County, moved off, got their degree, and now they're looking to settle down. And it's great to move back home, but sometimes people don't see how that's possible. Or they think of their community as the community they grew up in and maybe some of the misconceptions that grew out of that. But really showing what Wadena County is today and making the pathway to moving back a reality.
I think that's really true. There's a lot of times where people have gone to school in a small community, left to go to college or to go work someplace else, and probably have gotten some good paying jobs, and then they look back at that small community and they think, well, there's no way I can make a living in that area. But that's really not true now, is it?
No, it's not true. You know, there's great paying jobs throughout the county. It's also popular for people to commute. Wadena County's perfectly situated kind of in that north central area. So you can travel a little bit if you want to, or you can work from home, you know, with the internet. So it's becoming more and more reality. You know, it's not this far off, remote cabin in the woods, unless you want it to be.
Yeah, which a lot of people do.
Which a lot of people do, and I understand that.
Right. So if you were to work with someone that's just coming to the area, what are some of the resources that you can provide through your program?
Yeah. So we just launched a website, wadenacountyiscalling.com, and on there we have a couple key pieces. The first is an employer connection page, and employers throughout the county have signed up to be on here. It's like a listing, and they have information on their organization and their HR contact information. And this page is really designed for someone who doesn't want to browse jobs, but they want to find an organization that's the right fit for them. You know, and company culture is becoming more and more important these days. And so these employers have said, hey, reach out to us, and then we can start a conversation and see if there's a right fit for you here. Instead of kind of the other way around of maybe traditional job postings of, oh, do I want to do this particular job? Kind of looking at the company as someone to move into.
So who are some of your partners that you work with?
Yeah. So to fund this and to get it off the ground, we're fortunate to receive funding from Wadena County, Sourcewell, and Todd Wadena Electric Co-op, and then the Economic Alliance ourselves have funded some of the work.
I know you don't work for Sourcewell, but could you just mention what Sourcewell is for people who might not have ever heard of that?
Oh, I will certainly try.
They're coming on the program a little later down the road, but
Perfect. So the way I see it, they're in cooperative purchasing. They help cities and nonprofits buy in bulk, but then they use some of that money to help fund community development and community projects throughout Region 5 and perhaps even the broader area.
So do you work with the Initiative Foundation at all?
You know, we do partner with them. They have not been involved in this project, but we certainly would love to, you know, explore that in the future.
And where's your office located? Do you have an office or do you work remotely?
So I actually work remotely. We do have meeting space at West Central Telephone in Sebeka, and that is our official address. But I have been working remotely since the pandemic started. And it was just, I'm a team of one, so kind of discovered there wasn't really a need to go into an office like so many other people discovered during this time. And so I office from home, but several days a week I am out about in the community. You know, typically when I'm meeting with a business owner or a city, I'm going to them.
Okay.
You know.
So if a young family were interested in coming back to the county, Wadena County, do they set up a meeting with you, and do you sit down and walk us through a little bit the process that you use to introduce these people to what's available?
So we're still kind of fleshing out that stage of it. You know, the first stage is we're just trying to get the word about Wadena County out there farther. You know, attract these people first and have them learn about what we have to offer. So we have the website. We're on social media, we're on Facebook and expanding to LinkedIn and Instagram. And then we're trying some, we might call guerrilla marketing tactics to spread the word. Our first foray into that is we've printed just pulpboard coasters that talk about Wadena County on both sides, and we're distributing them to bars and restaurants throughout the region. really just thinking about who's sitting around with idle time on their hands and what's a cheap way to introduce them, to a concept. So we're trying that, and then we're doing some print advertising as well. Down the line, we'd like to develop more of a community concierge program. Once we kind of have a base, understand what people moving back, what level of connection they want.
We still see signs all over, help wanted. How does what you do connect to that? Is there any connection that you have?
There's a complete direct connection, and that's really one of the impetuses of starting Wadena County is Calling, is just, the fact is we need more people in our communities. The baby boomer generation is retiring rapidly, as they deserve to, but there just aren't enough of my generation to fill those spots. Just physically, we don't exist. And so we really need to bring new people into our community to get these jobs filled. It's really a desperate need at this point. And so the Economic Alliance, when thinking how economic development can influence workforce, we see this as one of the ways we can help our local employers, is by proactively trying to attract people to the area and workers.
How many manufacturing businesses do you think there are in Wadena County? Do you have any idea?
I'd say there's probably roughly 10.
10? And what would be the biggest for employment?
Oh, well, it's not exactly manufacturing, but Mason Brothers and Russ Davis in Wadena, they employ a fair share, probably a few hundred. Kern Lasers out in the Wadena Business Park, they just had an expansion, which is great to see. And then a great story that came out of the Wadena Business Park, Mercury Mosaics was a business that was operating in the cities, and they were looking to expand somewhere else, and they came across Wadena, and they met the great Wadena Development Authority Director, Dean Uzelman, and he showed them around. So when they opened their second manufacturing location, they chose Wadena, and that brought a fair number of jobs to the area too. So it's great to see not only people looking at moving to Wadena County or moving to rural areas, but larger manufacturers are now looking at setting up second locations. And Voyager Industries just moved to Staples, and they make Yeti fish houses, which are Minnesota's play toy,
Yeah, and
so
I think they're expanding too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and they moved in. They were able to find workers right away.
That's amazing to me. Where did they find them?
Just around.
Around the corner?
Yeah, just around the corner. There were people. I think part of the attraction probably is they manufacture such cool things.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a guy who likes to weld and in your free time you like to fish, well, wouldn't you like to be working on docks and fish houses?
Sure.
And they have such a great company culture. And when I toured their plant, you could eat off the floor.
Oh, really?
I was so impressed. So impressed.
And I don't know what they employ. They must employ 30 or more, maybe.
Or more, yeah. Moving into more, they're constantly expanding.
That's great. So are you looking to replicate this to other counties, or is this something you want to kind of keep under wraps for Wadena County alone?
Well, we're always open to cooperating with Wadena County, or with other counties, but right now our main focus is Wadena County. That's who we serve, and there are other communities throughout Minnesota who have been doing these resident recruitment campaigns. 218 Relocate up in Bemidji, that one's become fairly popular, that I'm sure viewers know about. But we're open to partnering with these other resident recruitment campaigns to really champion greater Minnesota and rural life. But for our work, we're dedicated to Wadena County. This is our main focus. And unfortunately, I kind of see Wadena County as this forgotten middle. You have Brainerd Lakes area to the east, and you have Perham and Otter Tail to the west, other lakes areas, and Wadena County's in the middle. And even though it's not a lake area, it's we're not a resort community. We're farming. outdoor hiking, hunting, those types of things. That's not a bad thing to be. That's a great thing to be. There's a lot of dignity in that. And so we're not trying to become a Lakes region or, be Brainerd, be Durham. We're trying to be Wadena County and celebrate what that is, because it's a really cool place.
One of the things that we're really blessed with from Crosby to Perham is great health care.
Yes.
I mean, we have really good hospitals in just about every one of these communities. And I know they're starting to lose nurses, and they're losing a lot of their technical staff. Have you had an opportunity yet to work with healthcare people?
We've had, kind of constant communication with the HR teams over at, Lakewood and then Tri-County Health, who they're building a new facility in Wadena.
When are they moving into that?
They're moving in December, but the grand opening will be in March, and it is a beautiful new facility. And so excited to have that for our community. And so we've been talking to their HR folks and kind of trying to keep a constant temperature read. And one of the things they said is trying to, when they hire someone, particularly thinking about a physician moving to the area and why they should choose to work at Lakewood or Tri-County versus somewhere else. They don't really have the materials to talk about the community or the knowledge or the depth. So from those conversations, this program also, so another way this program became more important for us to launch, because when they're having those initial conversations, they need to be able to say, hey, this is a great place to work, but it's a great place to live too. Because so often families, they're not just looking at a job when you're looking at a job. You're looking at the whole picture.
Sure.
And so we're trying to add that supplemental information to those HR teams so they can attract more nurses, keep physicians, and not have the story of, oh, well, I'd like to come here, but you got the trailing spouse. Is there a job for them? How do we even get connected to the community? We're saying here. It's all here.
What if you could identify 2 or 3 real obstacles? What are they that you face?
One, I would just say misconceptions, or I'd say older attitudes about what the community might be. So often, and I don't even allow this phrase in meetings anymore. If someone says it, I shush them right up. They say, oh, well, we're just a poor community and we don't have a lake. And, well, yes, if you look at the demographics, it's a little lower.
Las Vegas doesn't have a lake.
Yeah, exactly. There are ways other communities can thrive without having a lake. And just because, maybe the socioeconomic status of our community members may not be as high as other communities, doesn't mean they're not caring community members, doesn't mean they're not good workers, and doesn't mean they don't deserve a bigger business to come in or start up and maybe improve that a little bit,
Yeah.
So I don't see that as a detriment, but it is an obstacle when having those initial conversations, some of those misconceptions.
So if I came to you and said, I've got skills, let's say I'm a welder.
Yeah.
Would you then kind of connect me to some of the industries that you work with?
Absolutely.
And then I could go and talk to those people?
Absolutely. And whether you're comfortable having that conversation with me, some people thrive on the one-on-one interaction. I can make those connections to the HR teams, or logging on to our employer connection page and doing it yourself. So much can be done remotely now, so it's really whatever the person's comfortability level is.
Sure. And we're going to post that website information on the show as we're talking here.
Great.
If you were to look at an area that you think is really going to start growing in Wadena County, what would that be, do you think? That's a crystal ball question, I know.
Crystal ball question. One of the things that I've seen really pop up kind of through the pandemic is these smaller kind of micro businesses that really have opportunity to grow and expand. So there have been a tremendous people who have been rushing to farmers markets for things that they make and they grow. And I met a woman 2 years back now. We held a farmers market vendor training just on how to get your cottage food license and things like that. Well, she enjoyed it so much, and she got her feet wet in it, and she got a little extra income, which is we could all use these days. But she enjoyed the food process so much that she started her own business, her own actual restaurant in Verndale, the Galley of Verndale, another free plug for this business. And right now, there's so many people kind of dabbling in their hobbies or trying to think, how can I make a little extra money out of my hobby? Particularly, because of, we have a looming recession that we might be facing. And so there's an opportunity for small businesses just to boom, because people are learning how to make money doing what they love. And then organizations like myself and the Small Business Development Center, we're there to, hey, let's help plan let's help develop a concrete business plan, or let's give you more of the tools and resources you need. So I think that there's going to be a real big boom in small businesses of all kinds in the next few years as people discover working for themselves and making money doing what they love.
We're about out of time, but just to repeat, what is the website called?
WadenaCountyIsCalling.com.
WadenaCountyIsCalling.com. And it's, does it connect to you? Is there a place that they can call you if they want to?
Yes, my contact information is there.
Okay. And, well, we think that you're on to something, and I think it'll be interesting to see how this goes along. Do you have a board? I was going to ask you if you have a board.
I do. I have a board of 8 people.
Okay.
And they are volunteers from across the county. And they're great to work with, and they're professionals from anywhere from Lakewood Health, West Central Telephone,
So you got the whole
Electric.
geographic
Yeah,
area
we got
covered.
the whole area covered. That's important to us.
Okay. Well, Katie, thank you for coming on board. Again, it's called Wadena is Calling, and Katie is the Executive Director of the Economic Alliance. And you've been watching Lakeland Currents. I'm Ray Gildow. So long, until next time.